Welcome to Not Suitable for Work. I'm your host, Peter C. Diamond. You think your office is nuts? Wait until you hear some of these stories.
It's a story I tell people as a cautionary tale of what not to do in a pressure-filled situation.
And there's nothing like making a joke and looking at a room full of people who, are just stone-faced, and they know that you blew it.
What about our professional dynamic has given you license to act in this way?
I realized she's kind of a mean girl.
With each podcast, I'll interview people who have a humorous work story to share. Along the way, I'll offer tidbits of advice to help you make sense of your own office nonsense. Don't worry, no careers were harmed in making Not Suitable for Work. Names and places may have been changed to protect the not so innocent. Without further ado, let's get this show on the road. Career success can be precarious. When asked to take on the impossible, is it better to enthusiastically say yes or bow out gracefully? When you're a young gun, eager to make your mark, prove your mettle, there's only one answer, and no looking back. In our next story, it's all hands on deck to retain a client's business that's going down the toilet. At the helm is a newly promoted account director, hand-selected by the CEO to do the impossible. Pressure mounts as he and his team are running out of time to come up with a big, game-changing idea. When everyone zigs, sometimes you gotta zag. It takes guts and some chutzpah, and that's exactly what happens. But will it pay off? Will the young gun be a hero or a goat? Let's find out.
My story is more about an overall assignment and some of the things that happen in the process of executing this assignment. So it isn't a very specific time and place. It's several occasions. And it led to some very interesting experiences for me personally and for the agency I worked for. And learned some great things from it. So let me back up for a second. I used to work for DDB in New York City. And at the time, we had an account that was in serious trouble.
And can I
that
just to clarify, so this is an advertising agency?
An advertising agency.
An advertising
yes,
agency. Okay,
sorry.
great.
Yes. And the account was quilted northern bathroom tissue. And this was about 20 years ago. So the problem that we were having as an agency, and the reason we were put into review, which is what happens when a client decides that they want to fire you and look at other agencies, was that we were unable to produce ads that broke through the clutter. So I had just been promoted to group account director, and I was, I was at that point in my career where I was kind of like hungry to lead and make a mark and all that kind of stuff, but still kind of, unsure of myself, kind of trying to fit into my clothes. So the CEO of the agency at the time came to me. I was not working on the accounts, and he kind of pulled me into his office and he said, Belmonte, we got this huge problem, and you're a packaged goods guy. So I'm going to put you on it. I'm going to give you a whole new team, and you guys should be able to hopefully solve it because we really need this account.
So now are we talking so your boss, is he a pretty senior level guy?
This was the CEO.
The CEO. So you're also so you're in a big office, right? So he pulls you into the big office in the corner, the whole shebang.
And I should add that and I don't know why this will be kind of important in the end. He was a smoker.
Okay.
So it was kind of like, Belmonte, we got some real serious shit here.
So this is also a time where, for people who don't know this, you could actually smoke in the office.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So now I just dated myself. Yeah. So anyway, it turns out that the biggest problem that the agency was having was we were trying to produce work for Quilted Northern that competed head-on with Charmin and Cottonelle. And it was all about softness. So back then, I don't know if you remember or if anybody remembers, it was always about squeezing the Charmin, the softest brand. Cottonelle was the softest brand.
Who was Mr. Whipple?
Mr. Whipple was Charmin.
Oh, it was Charmin. Okay.
That was like, yeah.
Yeah.
So we were basically trying to compete with the category leaders' message that they've been using for, God, probably like 50 or 60 years. And we were doing all sorts of weird tests to the toilet paper. Like we were testing the strength and the tensile to see how soft it was and whether or not we had a unique process that made our paper softer. It was just ridiculous. And I remember going to my first big meeting at with their R&D people and sitting there and kind of holding the toilet paper in my hand and holding a roll of Charmin and holding Cottonelle. And I was like, it's all soft. At what point does soft really matter when you're all really, really soft? You know what I mean? There was just really no difference. So I kind of rattled some cages and said, look, we're never going to get work that's going to break through the clutter if we continue to try to compete on the same plane as the category leader and the number 2 brand. So the idea then was to kind of challenge ourselves to think outside of the box and find a new strategic direction for the brand that would set it apart.
Okay, so
now
I'm going to stop for a second because all I heard was marketing stuff, think outside the box.
All right, yeah. Pull me back.
Classic marketing stuff. Talking to ourselves.
And then there was the ecosystem.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so you're thinking outside the box.
Right. So we had to be innovative. We had to find something new, unique, and different. So what we did was I coordinated a gigantic, almost like a brain trust meeting with clients and some of the people in our creative department, strategic planning people. And we did kind of this all-day deep dive into the business, trying to see if we can come up with something that was at least testable, that would be different than what the category was saying. So we had spent an entire day, and it was just dreadful. I mean, you know how these days are. You're locked in a room and
no windows.
Doing one presentation. Yeah, and it's the household penetration of, and you're just oh my God, what? And I was freaking out because we put all our money on this. You know what I mean? It was it was either make this happen or we were going to die and the business was going to go. And so, towards the end of the day, all of a sudden this statistic popped out on a slide, and it basically showed that with toilet paper consumption, 75% of usage is with women and 25% of usage is with men.
Okay.
Now, there were about 9 men in the room and 1 woman. So we all kind of looked at each other and we were like, huh? I don't get it. What? And this lovely lady who ended up being one of my most favorite clients just kind of looked at us and she said, we use it in the front. If you could have seen jaws drop at that, it was we had one of those moments that was at the same time holy crap, this could be something.
No pun intended with the holy crap.
Exactly.
Now, your client, is she I'm picturing a New York. Was she New York?
She was New York.
Okay, great.
Super smart. She was also, to her credit, from the client side, she was probably one of the more junior people in the room. And I remember I thought, piping in at that point and really explaining to us, and kind of like, I mean, it's like the opposite of mansplaining. It was womansplaining. But we needed to know that.
Yeah.
Like, we were truly clueless. So that was kind of like an aha moment. And where we ended up going with that was deciding that we would use a product attribute, which was quilted, and attach it to a consumer want, which was absorbency. Which then kind of laddered up to an overall benefit of makes you feel cleaner, which suddenly put us in really bizarre territory. This was bathroom tissue, and this was the only thing that everyone ever talked about was softness, which it turned out, everybody thought it was the same anyway. So we were really kind of being pioneers here. I had to go back and kind of report all of this back to my CEO after the meeting, kind of give him an update on where we netted out, what we were doing and stuff. So, you can imagine from my perspective, like newly promoted group account director, want to make my mark, but scared to death. all those mixed emotions. And
do I deserve to be here?
Exactly,
do I deserve this role?
What am I going to do?
Am I a fraud?
Yeah. What am I doing?
The same things everyone else feels as well.
Right. So I had scheduled a call with him in during the evening, and I was supposed to call him at home, which added even more pressure because I was like, I gotta call this guy at home and interrupt. You know what I mean? Like in terms of personal time to talk about bathroom tissue. So anyway, I call him up, and immediately he's got a cigarette in his mouth. You could tell he's just like, all right, Belmonte, what's up? So I kind of go through the whole spiel. I was like, well, we went through all this research. We did this, and it was a really great team building exercise, and we all kind of created this together. So we've all bought into it together, and we think that this is really the big idea that's going to help us break out of the rut and get some great creative scores. It's like, yeah. What are you doing? What is it? So we decided to really go after the primary user, of course, which is women, and we're going to talk to them about absorbency that will ultimately leave them feeling cleaner.
So are you like sweating now?
Yeah.
Like with
Yeah.
that?
And it's just dead silent. I could just hear the cigarette. And he goes, so, you want to talk to ladies about pee-pee? And I was like, I guess if you want to put it that way, yes, that's exactly what we're doing. And I remember he was like, Belmonte, this sounds absolutely bizarre. I have no idea where it's going to take you, but I trust you, and let's just go with it. Which was
it's great.
Truly one of the most rewarding moments of my career, but it also added another layer of pressure because we now had to create advertising that kind of delivered that and hopefully scored better. So at the end of the day, it really was kind of a gratifying experience to have him truly supportive of what I thought and what I felt and what the team felt. And we ended up doing some work, and I don't know if you can even remember this, but it was a campaign of animated old ladies that used to sit around and quilt bathroom tissue.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
They were known as the quilted northern quilters. And, and we did all sorts of absorbency demos, which we found consumers were completely acceptable of, because if we had done anything in the real world, it would have grossed them out. But because we were in a cartoon world, it was acceptable.
Well, especially with grandmas,
exactly,
right? I mean, how can you be offended by a grandma?
And they all had like those little glasses with the lights on, and they were just adorable old ladies. But what I think is great was because of that ad, I'd like to think that this is the reason why Charmin now has ads with bears, doing it in the woods.
Animated bears.
Yeah, and they actually have one spot, and I'm like, oh, can't believe they've gone this far. Like, the mother bear's talking about having to do the laundry less often because Charlotte cleans you better.
I mean, did you ever think that this is what your life, what your life would be, your kind of career life would be like?
Absolutely not. But I will tell you that it is one of them. It's made me extremely interesting at dinner parties. Telling that story, but it was one of the most scary, gross, and gratifying experiences of my life, I have to say. And I'm kind of proud of it. I like to look back at that and go, all right, it was bathroom tissue, and we talked about peeping, but we were groundbreaking,
So, for you, kind of, working through this, taking this on as a kind of a young charge, if you will, like, what would you say for other people who are in a similar position, kind of feeling newly promoted, maybe feeling like, do I deserve to be here? Any advice for them on how to work through that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first thing I think that was important for me too was not to walk in and I'm going to use this word, forgive me, shit all over the work that had already been done. So what I needed to do was kind of like take a step back and make sure that I was listening to all the different parties and constituents, the clients, the creatives, and all that kind of stuff, and really kind of understand what the landscape was. Because I couldn't go in and say, we got to rock the world on day one, even though my gut told me that's exactly what we had to do. The idea of creating a team work session was my way of trying to get everybody on the same page, help them understand that this was the only way we were going to be able to do anything differently. And really kind of, I learned an expression when I was a kid, and that's people help support what they themselves create. And I took that to heart, and I knew that this was going to be a real challenge and a real change. And the only way I could really drive it was by getting everybody in the same room at the same time. So that one day where we were sifting through data, looking at ANU studies, which is attitudes and usage, and all that kind of stuff. It was a deadly day, but if we didn't have that moment where we learned about usage, we would have never had the strategy. And by the way, the closing chapter to the story was when we started advertising with the Quilted Northern Quilters, we got double-digit sales increases, and we leapfrogged over Cottonelle and became the number 2 brand in the category. So from that perspective, it was extremely successful. I was kind of a hero. The clients were heroes. We had like 5 good years of a love fest because of that.
Wow. Yeah. That's great. That's great. I mean, I love just even, so many people, when they come into a situation and especially if they're designated to fix it or change it, they just come barreling in and, this is what we're going to do and this is what's wrong. And I think this is a great testament to taking a step back, listening, really understanding, and also creating the environment for that, for your client to actually, for her to feel comfortable. Sounds like she was pretty direct anyway, but to be able to say, look, here's the deal,
Right.
Because I think a lot of ideas get left unsaid because people don't feel comfortable enough to be able to, voice them.
Right.
So I think it's great. It's fantastic.
And the other part of that story that really meant a lot to me was the fact that I had a CEO that first put the weight of the world on my shoulders and gave me a chance to go out and try to figure it out and solve it, and then fully backed my decision. If there had been any kind of wavering on his part from that phone call, I don't know if I would have gone back and said, let's take a second look at the strategy. You know what I mean? I would have second guessed myself, and he really just believed in me enough to be able to go with it, even though, he said it.
Well, it's funny. Because I hear other people, like, they'll talk about a boss and who will be like, well, if I don't know if that's the right thing or not, but if that's what you want to do, and you're just like,
are you
how?
sure?
Yeah, and it's just like, how does that help? How does it help? So yeah, I think that is also another thing for leaders to also remember, you have to support your people.
Exactly.
If you want the best things to happen.
And trust that they're doing the work.
Today, Joe is busy teaching and consulting and still finds time to follow the goings-on in the toilet paper category. If you want more Not Suitable for Work or have a work story to tell, be sure to follow us on Facebook at Not Suitable for Work. You can find our podcast on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play, or wherever you find your podcasts. I'm Peter C. Diamond. You can follow me on Twitter at Peter C. Diamond. Not Suitable for Work is produced by Matt Cunningham at Truthful Enthusiasm. Get your story online with truthfulenthusiasm.com. Until next time,